Larsen sure could have chosen an easier time to start a new job. Two jobs, actually. Hi, I'm Dave Price, and this is the American Farmland Owner Podcast. Mindy is CEO times two. One is CEO of the Iowa Egg Council, and two, CEO of the North Central Poultry Association. That's the newly merged three-state association that represents Minnesota, Iowa, and Missouri. Now, inflation would have already been a challenge for a new leader on the job, but highly pathogenic avian influenza plus that inflation, wowza, that's a lot. Let's ease into this conversation with Mindy, though. How this farm girl got where she is. Let's talk about your life first. How did you end up being all about eggs? How did that happen?
I grew up on a farm, of course, like many Iowans, and I get to work for a job that works for farmers, which I love. But in particular, I'm learning about eggs and poultry myself because our family farm did not have poultry or eggs, but it included certified Angus beef, if you've ever had that on a menu when you go to a restaurant, on the cattle side, and then also a lot of pigs. So if you like bacon or bratwurst or pork chops, those would be the kind of
Or
thing.
like all the above.
All the above, sausage, pepperoni on your pizza, all those good things would have come from my family farm and many others across our state. And so I had an opportunity. I worked prior to this job as CEO for the Iowa Egg Council and North Central Poultry. I worked for the Iowa Corn Growers for 19 years. And Iowa is also all about corn, still love corn. We're on the same team. It's the way I think about it. But it's really great for me to get back to working for the livestock sector, because that was kind of our family's principal book of business, you might say, and the thing that my dad, certainly as a farmer, was most passionate about.
So explain this two-role thing.
Oh,
Because
yes.
one job's not enough, or what's the deal here?
Exactly. Well, I will say that a lot of Americans have more than one job going on. A lot of people have a side hustle or something. That's not exactly what I have here, but
All right.
essentially, my title is CEO, but I work for two boards of directors for two similar but not the same organizations. The one organization is called the Iowa Egg Council, and as you might imagine, it's for Iowa producers of eggs, and they work together as a board of directors. They're elected by their peers to support, promote eggs, why eggs are so delicious, why they're nutritious, and let's work on that. On the other side of my job is the poultry side, and it's more policy engagement, research and lobbying engagement, things like that. And then that includes the state of Iowa and then also the state of Minnesota and Missouri, and we are called the North Central Poultry Association. So I do have two titles. I have two boards that are my bosses, but it allows me to feel really great about the question of which comes first, the chicken or the egg, because I will always say both, because they are both my bosses. So we'll just get that one out of the way from the very
Please
beginning.
tell me you use that line every single time you talk to a group.
I do.
Please,
I try my best.
And are you contractually obligated to have eggs at home every morning?
I am not contractually obligated, but if you are a warehouse shopper, which I happen to be, Sam's Club, Costco, whatever, I won't reveal mine because that would be some sort of a branding thing, I suppose.
Sure.
You might say to yourself, who are the people that would buy those giant boxes of eggs? Me, that's me. I was
Well,
that
yeah,
person
but you have like 100 kids, though. That's why.
I do have a lot of kids, but we're the ones that buy those, big boxes of eggs. I've always believed and loved eggs. My dad, as a farmer, would actually make his own hot eggs every morning for breakfast. His whole life, he still does today. And so eggs was a big part of our family, even though we didn't raise them.
Okay, so before we get to the serious stuff, your favorite way to eat eggs, in what form? What
Uh,
dish?
I I actually like them on a very simple, like an egg McMuffin style sandwich, but at home. It's just a fried egg with a little bit of cheese and 2 pieces of toast.
Nice, nice. All right, so talk about the business. I was thinking of you during the last presidential election because eggs kind of became a campaign issue, right? You know, when you've got media out there interviewing people, you know, a lot of times people always like to complain about gas prices, right? Gas prices are
Yes.
always too high. No, it seems like no matter what they are, they're too high, and they remember, you know, you'll get some old guy
Yes.
on there saying, I remember when I paid 50 cents a gallon, you know, whatever. Um, but eggs kind of became a thing too. But as so often is the case, it gets oversimplified and explained very incorrectly about what is happening. So when you're at the store and somebody hits you up about, hey, why the heck are these things so expensive? Can you explain, like, how did we get here? What's going on?
I am not an economist, although I did
Mhm.
take economics when I was in college, so
Same.
I have an opportunity, but I will defer the true charts and graphs and terms to people whose primary business is economics. But in general, first I'd like to say that when the price of eggs is high and consumers don't want to eat them, that's in no one's best interest. Obviously, as egg producers, we want people who love to eat the eggs and can also afford to eat the eggs. And so it's not a joyous occasion for anyone when consumers are stressed about buying eggs. Having said that, in a way, it's a little positive if people like presidential candidates or people are talking about the price of eggs. It's because they like eggs and they want to have them in their home so much that it's like one of the core products that they will always want to buy. So for some people, that might be bread. But for a lot of people, that's eggs. Eggs is what they want to make sure and have in their house. And so, being sensitive to people's budgets, certainly is a concern, but it's also a little bit of a positive thing because we know that Americans in particular, but people worldwide, really support the nutritious aspect and the deliciousness of eggs.
So it has to be, I mean, it's got to be gut wrenching when bird flu really started getting in here. And that's the one thing that, you know, I'm new to the ag space and I've learned so much talking to people over the past year that we've been doing the podcast here. And you know, when it's detected in a flock, then the protocol is you're going to have to cull the flock, which, I mean, that's obviously that's devastating. And
Yes.
we've seen millions of birds destroyed because of this. And so clearly that puts a lot of inflationary pressure on the remaining eggs, right? Like, I know you said
Yes.
you're not an economist, but
Yes.
you do
So,
understand all of that though.
yep. The principal factor, probably the largest factor that's affecting egg prices in this moment in time, as well as last year, would be uh, highly pathogenic avian influenza, or HPAI, or commonly known as bird flu, but that's kind of a misnomer. So
Yeah.
we prefer to call it high path. But in any case, the bird disease is affecting them, and certainly when the birds get it, it does have to be contained because it can spread so easily. And when you're unfortunately having to destroy birds, that's just destroying your supply, and it destroys it immediately. There's not those hens to be laying the eggs, but then there's a waiting period and a cleaning period and a biosecurity protocols have to be brought up to speed, and to make sure that the food is safe, obviously, and the birds are safe. Um, but that just affects the supply greatly. And then if you think about it, eggs actually even though they have been expensive, but still compared to other types of proteins are still a good value product. And so their demand just continues stronger and stronger, which is a positive thing in general. But when you have this, huge reduction in the supply and then a continued ramp up in demand, it has just caused an excess on prices just because of avian influenza. But in addition to that, something to think about too is eggs are, from the pricing standpoint, kind of taking it twofold with pricing concerns, because anything that it's affecting any other product on America's shelves is also impacting the price of eggs. So you got to think of, labor costs, transportation costs, packaging costs, the marketing costs, every single thing that Americans are concerned about as increasing, that's also a portion of the price of eggs that's increasing. So you have the regular inflationary factors that are affecting many, many products in America, as well as eggs. And then you have high path avian influenza. So it's just a big problem right now, and our egg producers are not pleased with it. They're having a very, stressful time about it and trying to produce this product. And it's also been stressful for the consumer that's had to pay more.
And we're talking to you in late January. So as you kind of assess the landscape, how bad is high path right now, would you say?
So I'm talking to you from Iowa at the moment.
Only
Yep.
your industry too.
Yep, at the moment, at the end of January, and Iowa has not had an outbreak of a commercial facility for at least a month, a little over a month or so since people have been in that process. But the most recent infections have come from wild birds. And according to the Department of Agriculture, either federal or state, the indications are that this happens primarily during, when the wild birds are moving, which is more likely to be in spring or fall than it is likely to be in the dead of winter. So I don't think anyone expects that HPAI has gone away. I think that it's something that we will be seeing again when the spring comes, for sure.
So how does the industry handle that then? I mean, do we need to push for, does the industry need to push for, is it vaccinations? Is it what's going to control this? Because these wild birds are freaking everywhere.
Wild birds are everywhere. And when it comes to that perspective, earlier on when they were thinking that it was moving along with, and it can move in many different ways. They found that it could possibly move with people as people are moving from place to place. It could move with trucks. It can move with a lot of things. But birds, especially small ones like your barn swallows, for example, they're tiny little birds and they can get into tiny spaces. I sense of my board members that are my bosses are a lot of exasperation because they're just doing a great job of making sure that their biosecurity and safety at their facilities is not only excellent, it's beyond excellent, top notch. And then we're still having these incidences. And so I do think that having great biosecurity does reduce the likelihood of getting avian influenza, but at the same time, it is very frustrating that they can still get it. So long term, there is a discussion, and this is going along. The scientists in our government are having a discussion about vaccines, but that solution is not as simple as it might sound, because number one, the vaccine has to be able to be, economical for the producers and to be able to use it in a way that still allows them to, be able to continue their businesses and be able to sell the eggs. And then also there's a huge problem with trade, international trade, and the lack of understanding of vaccines, because as it stands today in January of 2025, if a facility or a state would decide to vaccinate their herds, they would become ineligible for export.
Yeah.
To the countries that don't allow it. And so therefore it would have a enormous financial impact. And so I don't think it's maybe never. I think that I know the discussions are continuing to go on in regards to the vaccine front. Our boards are believers in science and finding ways to solve problems, but as of this day, that is not yet the answer.
Which has to be super frustrating, right?
Yes, it is super frustrating for our farmers and companies and producers that are out there working their hardest. I know some companies have had even more than one outbreak, and then
Mhm.
they reassess. They say, well, how did this happen? They do every single thing possible, and then you know unfortunately are, I don't want to call it unlucky, but unfortunate, that their facility happens to have received the virus. So, in any case, I know that our producers are resilient. They are hardworking. Their employees are amazing. Everybody who works in this industry, and I have no doubt that they will continue to try to solve this problem. But as of yet, it's still very perplexing and frustrating for them.
Has this become serious enough to where you have producers leaving the industry?
I know that there have been some companies that have exited, but I'm not sure based on if it's just this one factor or not. Obviously a company's decision to continue or not probably is a lot of factors. I will say there's a very important program that we support. It involves indemnification of facilities who do have to depopulate. And if a facility today, under the law, if a facility tests positive for high path, they have to destroy their flock, and it's a horrible situation for everyone. But on the positive side, why do they do that? Well, they do that to contain the disease, so the disease doesn't spread to all the other flocks within the state or even the Midwest or whatnot. So, but the federal government currently has an indemnification program that doesn't necessarily make it so that people make money, but it would help them
Mhm.
to get by. I would say kind of live to fight another day, live to, keep your business going so that you can continue. And so that by destroying the population, which doesn't help you as a business, it helps the public and it helps everyone else. And that program of indemnification is very important, not just with this particular disease, but with animal diseases.
All right, let's see if we can stump you with a math question here.
Oh, no.
How much of the recent increase in price would be HPAth induced,
Mhm.
if you will, versus all the other input costs and all the other inflationary stuff we've been dealing with? How's that for a tough one?
I honestly don't think I can answer that, but I'm gonna throw it back at you a little bit. I'm gonna add another, let's see, seventh grade math term. I'm gonna add another item to
Okay.
your story problem, and that is
Okay.
something else that's going on that also is impacting the price of eggs that we haven't even talked about is that there are, I believe, 8 states in our country that have implemented cage-free laws.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And substantial number of Iowa producers have chosen to adapt to cage-free because if people want the market, that's what the consumer wants. We'll provide it to them.
And it's like 40% or something. Is that
It
the
could
right
be up
figure?
to 40%. That is
Okay.
entirely possible.
Okay.
I don't
Sorry
know
to
what this,
interrupt you.
but it is. But if you think about there are at least 8 states and then a number of companies who have decided in those states it's the state law, but other individual companies have decided that it's in their sustainability goals or whatnot that they
Mm-hmm.
want to be able to do this. Well, as a practical matter, if this is what the consumer wants, the industry will provide it. But there are some costs that come along with that because the infrastructure or the housing and the spacing that is
Mm-hmm.
needed for the birds is larger. And so just like, if you have a larger anything, it's probably going to cost more. That's kind of what is just another factor in the pricing of why the price of eggs may have been higher. So I can't I don't know. I'm sure that there's some economists. After we get off this call, I'm going to be looking to see if I can find this exact answer for you. But all of these things do certainly play a factor.
So as you kind of look forward, where do you see, where is your hope that maybe some of this inflationary pressure can be eased? And I guess I'm thinking maybe on the consumer side. So for those who aren't directly in this space and they're listening just out of curiosity and they're thinking, okay, bottom line, I just want to know if my dozen eggs are going to be a little cheaper. Is it practical to think that, or do we have so many factors working against it that this is probably where it's going to stay?
So I recently went to a conference and they had an economist who was speaking to this topic, and there is some optimism actually that the price of eggs will in fact come down, but maybe not for another maybe 3/4 or so of time. So maybe 3/4 of a year, going forward, and some relief in that, which could come from increase in supply, which means the birds are healthier. We're going to be able to continue to, although we might have high path avian influenza, it is something that could be contained more, and so thus the supply is higher. The price could go down, but I also think that from a consumer's perspective, if they're looking at it about how much, I don't see us ever being able to go back to regularly seeing a dozen eggs at 99 cents. I think that would be not very sustainable, but I hope to be proved wrong. I guess maybe the consumer wants that, but it would be a lot of change to be able to go back to the way that things were prior to this most recent run up in the prices in the entire economy.
Although I will say though, I mentioned we've been doing this podcast a little more than a year, and the one thing that has stuck out to me is the creativity and ingenuity of people, and I'm especially thinking for those who've decided to do cage-free operations. And undoubtedly, they will continue to find ways to make it a more cost-effective operation just out of repetition, right? Like
For sure.
you kind of learn as you go.
Yes. Yes. And like I said, here on our board of directors, which is North Central Poultry, Minnesota, Iowa, and Missouri, we have many cage-free members that are producing both broiler chickens and also eggs that way, as well as conventional. And I would just sidebar to you, as to your listeners, that both types of eggs are very nutritious and delicious. So it's kind of a consumer angle, but from a healthy standpoint, both products are amazing. But yes, the ingenuity of the American agricultural industry, whether you're the one that's raising the animal or whether they're the agricultural scientist in the building thinking up ways to raise the livestock in a more efficient manner. I have been around long enough to see that. I'm so proud to work for this.
You can find out more about why Mindy Larsen thought that she wanted a career in agricultural law. That is part of our profile piece about her. You can find that in the weekly American Farmland Owner e-newsletter. It's the place where landowners get their news. Check it out at AmericanFarmlandOwner.com. Did I mention it's free? It is, and you can have it emailed right to your inbox every week. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks for caring about the future of our farmers.